Hello there everybody, Sam Strains here, welcome back to the Railway and welcome to another review. Up today it is yet another brand new model from Accurascale. I think Accurascale have got a bit of a thing for nuclear flask wagons because they've just brought out another brand new one. And I thought, you know, since it's a brand new model and I've never looked at any sort of nuclear wagon before, it would be really interesting to get one and give it a try. And so I have done. Today's model is this. It is the brand new from Accurascale FNA-D new generation nuclear flask carrier, which was a replacement to the original FNA wagons. Anyway, this is a pack of 2 nuclear flask carriers, which is available for £74.95. That's the RRP and the retailer price, so not too confusing. And if you want to check these out, I have got some affiliate links down in the description. I was also told by Richard at Accurascale that if I was going to review one of these, I should also get some of these. These are the little 3-volt CR927 batteries, which is presumably here to power some sort of additional lighting that these have. So already it sounds as though these models are quite feature packed. Looking at the photos of these models, they look incredibly detailed as usual from Accurascale, and so I cannot wait to get these out and see what these are like. So here we go with the all new FNA-D nuclear flask wagons. So here we go with the same sort of packaging that I saw on the Accurascale children wagons, or the same design at least, with the little line drawing on the front. So that's good, I like that, bit of consistency there from Accurascale. Let me show you the end of the box then. So there's a little image of the model itself. It is the FNA-D new generation nuclear flask carrier, and it's ACC 1115 Twin Pack A. And there are other packs available, different variations and such. So again, if you're interested in seeing those, check out the links in the description, affiliate ones. Anyway, let's get this out, see what this is like. It's got the protective plastic on it. It's a good job too, because this is all scratched up. But the box behind it looks absolutely pristine, so that was a good move, I think. Keeps it all together as well. I don't think there's much really to see on the rest of the box, which is good news, because now I'm ready to lift the lid. So let's see what we're greeted with. Okay, well, I can see the wagon straight away underneath the instructions. Yeah, quite hefty things, really. I mean, this is a 2-pack for £75, so we're talking less than £40 each for the wagons. I guess that is quite a lot of money for a wagon, but knowing Accurascale and their level of detail, I'm expecting that price to be very much reflected in the models themselves. But we'll get onto those in just a moment. First, here's an image of the real thing. I mean, it's almost difficult to tell. I think that is the real thing as opposed to one of the models, but you know, models and layouts these days are so good that it gets hard to tell sometimes. Anyway, there's a brief history. Well, it's not brief at all. There's an extensive history of these wagons. Pause and read that if you'd like to, although I will give you a very brief explanation of what a nuclear flask carrier is in just a moment. And then on the back, printed upside down, we have an exploder diagram which shows the complexity of these models. Yeah, there's really a lot to these models, lots of little details. We're going to take a look at all of those in just a second. Here's a little bit about the tail lights. To switch the tail light on and off, first orientate your model so that the light, part 19, is at the right hand end as depicted on the diagram below. Pass a magnet, shown by the yellow arrow, over the centre section of the wagon chassis, shown below. Well, there's a diagram there that makes that a little bit simpler. Magnetic light ones are available from Accurascale, so you don't actually get one with the model. That's strange, isn't it? Yeah, I would have thought that could have been included, really. It also doesn't mention whether or not these batteries are included. I'm guessing not, because it was suggested to me that I get some. But again, it would have been cool to have those installed from the factory, or possibly included in the box, so that they don't sort of go bad. Anyway, general information, yeah, there's that if you want to take a look at that. But that is all we have on the paperwork. So next, let's take a look at the accessories. We've got what seems to be a coupling bag here, which contains a full set of NEM tension locks, so that's 4 of those. And I think that's all we've got in that pack. And then there's another pack here with some additional details. Looks like we've got proper moving screw-link couplings, which is great to see. I love that feature. And then some pre-painted vacuum pipes and such as well, which really look like high-quality ones. Some gorgeous moulding on those. 3 different colours used. You've got the black, green and red. Yeah, it really sets the precedent in terms of what to expect from these models. Okay, so I'm going to pull this little tray out, just double check there's nothing else in the box. Nope, there isn't. So yeah, we really don't get the magic wand to operate the lights. I'm just going to use a regular magnet though. I think I once made a magic wand to operate my Dapol water tower, so I'm hoping that will do the job. So I'm just carefully unbuttoning this tray, which is released, and now I'm hoping I'll be able to peel back the first of these plastic covers to reveal the wagon. And the first thing is, my God, look at the complexity in the decoration there. This could be the model with the most printed detail across my entire collection. That whole side is just full of print work. That is unbelievable. Okay, how do I get this out? So I'm going to pull this foam out because I don't want to pull the buffers off. There we go. And then let's lift up the wagon. So the first thing really is the weight. Yeah, it seems to be a fairly hefty wagon when you consider that it's a lot of chassis and not a lot of body. And I can certainly feel some metal down on the bottom, which incidentally is incredibly detailed. Look at all of that. On the sides, you've already got an idea of the printed detail, and I will show you that in much more detail in just a second. Up on the top, there is the Flask itself. I don't know whether this opens or not. I'm a little bit frightened to try. I don't think so, but it's certainly a good looking part, again, with an incredible level of detail to it. And speaking of the detail, yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's an awful lot of separate detail and such. Yeah, I'm not feeling too nervous holding this. It feels like a sturdy model. Doesn't feel like there's parts and pieces flexing under my fingers, threatening to break off, which is not an impression I got with the last Accurascale wagon I looked at. That was the Siphon, which did feel very, very flimsy. This one really doesn't. And I think this is the vehicle that has the light on the end there. Quite incredible to think that that is going to work, because it's a seriously thin piece. But apparently work it does, and I will test that later on. Okay, moving on, let's have a look at the other one. Let's see if there are any noticeable differences. I think I'm going to try and unpack it in the same way as before, because that seemed to work without damaging it. So there we go. And let's lift this thing up. Yeah, it seems to be pretty much the same thing. It's constructed in the same way, although clearly the numbers printed onto it are different, which is cool. Another thing I've noticed is that the wheels sit into proper bearings, which is a very, very high quality feature. And of course, across this train pack, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 16 of these bearings. So that is going to be quite an expense as you add it all up. And if we look at the outside of the bogies, look at that. Can you see that? We've got rotating axle boxes. So these are quite expensive, at nearly £40 each. These are very expensive models, but sure enough, yet again from Accurascale, we've got an insane level of detail to really match that price. Yet again, straight out of the box, it's immediately obvious why these should be relatively expensive. And this is yet another example of Accurascale's unique ability to make an extremely expensive wagon look very much worth the money quite quickly. So, very exciting stuff. Let's bring both of these together. I will figure out how I actually get the battery into the one with the light and see if that works. And then we'll have a much closer look at the level of detail on these things. First of all though, let's have a brief background on the nuclear flask wagons, or the FNA-Ds, in real life. These nuclear flask carriers are much more modern than some of the other famous designs, such as the original FNA and the KUA wagons, as they were actually built between 2014 and 2019 as a direct like-for-like replacement to the original FNA wagons from the 1970s. A nuclear flask wagon is used to transport spent nuclear fuel cells from the power stations to the processing/disposal or research centres. as the flasks contain active nuclear materials, it's obviously very important that these vehicles/flasks maintain their integrity under virtually all conditions, protecting the cargo from impact or fire damage in order to prevent any leakage of radioactive material, which would obviously be very dangerous out in the open. While older nuclear flask wagons have now been retired, all of the FNA-D wagons are still in service today. Well, I guess I was wrong about the flasks opening up on these models, because on this one with the light at least, it does according to the instructions, not for any reasons of detail or accuracy, but in order to fit these little 3-volt batteries inside. So let's open this up and see if this works. So apparently this just unclips, which I am nervous about because they are so fine, and it looks as though these little latches are stopping this from coming off, which is very realistic but also very terrifying to have to overcome. Let's try and do it on the other side. Oops, yeah, that's broken off on me actually. Now that's a shame. Yeah, it snapped off. So yeah, not too impressed with the design of that really, because you know, if you've got to take it apart to put the batteries in, you don't want these little flimsy pieces holding it together really, because the average person's going to just snap them off like I did. So that's annoying and unfortunate, but I got it off at least. Let's have a look at putting these batteries in. So here's where the batteries go. You need 2 of them, and it says right there on the circuit board that you need CR927s. Now I understand them not fitting the batteries for sort of corrosion reasons, but really I think the fact that they didn't include these is quite stingy. They could have had a sort of pull tab for the user to pull out, I guess. That was tight. Because you know, even your 10p McDonald's Happy Meal toys come with these batteries included. I just think when you're spending £75 on a model, it wouldn't have hurt to include the batteries, and the same is true of the Magic Wand. It's just a bit of plastic with a magnet in the end. They could have just included it. I suppose the reason they didn't is that if you're buying a big rake of these, you would have a lot of them then, and then that would be a bit wasteful. But again, come on, it's £75 a pack. Include the batteries, include the Magic Wand, because other than that, I wouldn't have any complaints on the value for money. So instead of spending £2 something for an Accurascale wand, which isn't even in stock at the moment, according to their website, I've got this thing, which is a lollipop stick with a sort of neo magnet just hot glued to the end of it. And apparently I've got to wave it somewhere around the lower chassis here. So let's do that. And yeah, sure enough, we've got the light on now. And that's just blinking nicely away there. And you know, this is a single LED by the looks of it. It's flashing, so it's not even on all of the time. We've got 2 of those 3-volt batteries in here, so that is going to last absolutely forever. I would have thought the batteries are going to go bad and corrode long before you could possibly ever run them out. I think the only thing is you have to remember to switch it back off again. Otherwise, I suppose it could run itself out if it's left on for days on end. I guess there is the argument to make about track power. You know, could this have just had pickups in it and that would have allowed the light to be powered? Again, yes, I think so, but it's only really the one on the end, I think, that has this light. And so to engineer that into the model would have been quite costly. I guess this is the cheaper way of doing it. I think if every model had a light on it, not just the one on the end, then it would be a little different. But yeah, I guess this makes sense. So there you go, that's the lighting. It does work, it's a bit of a faff. I have broken my model in the process, which raises some questions about the practicality of this solution. But at the end of the day, it does work. Just be very careful with these little latch things, because unfortunately, mine is now missing one. So here it is, up close and personal for you, Accurascale's new and fantastic nuclear flask wagon. And I'm just going to show you one of these 2 up close, because like I say, they are very, very similar, except for the running numbers, and also except for the fact that this is the model that has the light on the end. And here's a closer look at that. Yeah, that does work very well, and it looks great as well. It's the kind of feature that you'd really expect from such a premium model. So where to even start? Let's start off with the decoration and finish. The finish looks absolutely fine, by the way. High quality finish to this, but it is the decoration that is most impressive. Just look at the sheer number of prints. And the close-ups reveal the high quality of these prints as well. must have been an awful lot of work. I'm not sure whether these prints had to be done individually or whether they can maybe tampo print all of each colour at the same time. But whichever way you look at it, there's a lot of work here, a lot of graphics design and a lot of work at the factory to get all of this applied. That's assuming that it is tampo printed and not UV printed or something like that, but I would say the quality of these prints is too high for it to be UV printed, unless the technology's come a lot further than I realise. So yeah, incredible level of detail, and that's just on the sort of chassis. The nuclear flask itself has a fair bit of decoration on it, as you can see, not just the numbers but the little warning signs as well. In terms of the weight, they are really quite heavy thanks to the die-cast component in the chassis, so they come in at 135 grams with the lights and batteries and such. The one without that comes in at 133 grams, so they are practically the same weight. That's only 10 grams lighter than the Accurascale Siphon-G, which was obviously a much larger wagon, and it's actually heavier than your typical Hornby coach by about 10 grams. So the weight of these is absolutely fantastic, yet of course they still have the proper bearings on the axles, which means that that extra weight shouldn't necessarily translate to too much extra drag. Speaking of the bogies, let's take a look at these because there's a lot of detail here, including even some printed detail, which I didn't necessarily notice before, but yeah, that's marvellous. Lots of moulded bogie detail, and you've also got these turning wheels, which look great as well. And if I push the wagon along, you can see that we also have the rotating axle boxes, which is not a feature I was aware of, but very impressive to see. The underframe itself is very detailed too. There's lots of moulded detail here, which is very, very fine considering some of this is actually die cast. And then there's also a plethora of separately fitted wire detail, even down here where you're never likely to see it. So again, incredible. These railings at either end are made of metal, and they're also incredibly straightly fitted, which is great to see. So high quality parts here. The buffer beams are looking a little bit bare because none of the detail has been fitted, but I assume that's so that the detail there doesn't interfere with the couplings on curves and such, which makes sense. So hopefully these will be practical models to run. In terms of the couplings, we have NEM pockets here, which have a small amount of pivoting to them. I don't think these are kinematic, but they do seem to spring back to the center quite nicely, which is good to see. The buffers are just made of plastic, unfortunately, but they are sprung. There you go, look at that. Quite an interesting buffer design. Maybe it would have been too complicated to make these out of metal or something, but they do spring, so it gets points for that. Look at the detail on the flask section itself. My favourite part is these little teeth, which you can see in the bottom of the container. And then around the other side, you've got this turning wheel, which presumably allows the flask to be opened. My favourite models are ones where you can look at them and see exactly how the real thing would work and see all of the little mechanisms and pieces and moving parts replicated. And this model is a great example of that. Even the little catches are marvellously detailed, maybe a little too detailed in fact, because obviously one of them eventually came off on mine. But the fact that this detail is here is incredible to see. And then the deck of the nuclear flask wagon has a lot of fine detail to it as well. And then there's also this raised section, which has quite a lot of detail to it as well. There are also what appear to be separately fitted, or at the very least separately painted lamp brackets as well. And also not forgetting the excellent level of moulded and in places separately fitted detail along the main body of the wagon. So absolutely incredible. Is it worth almost £40? Do you know what? Probably yes, because there's no visible glue, there are no wonky details, no broken parts, except for the part that I broke, but can't entirely blame the factory for that now, can I? Also lots of metal, lots of weight, high quality features such as the proper separate bearings on the axles. It's a high priced wagon, sure, but it's also a high quality wagon with an absolutely incredible level of detail, particularly where the decoration is concerned. So this is a classic example of a wagon that is worth every penny. It will be too much money for some people, there will be too much detail here for some people to appreciate, and those people should look at cheaper, less complex wagons, which will probably be more their cup of tea. But like I said on the Siphon-G, this is for people who really love that nth degree of detail. Every little part of this model has been fanatically recreated in miniature, and it really is quite wonderful to see. But how do these run? Do the couplings work as they should? Are they nice and free rolling? Are there any complications with the rotating axle boxes? At the moment, I have no idea, but I need to find out. So let's move on and test their performance. So both wagons are down onto the track, and I've now inserted all of the couplings into them. I've selected a Class 20 to haul these. It doesn't seem like too much of an overkill loco to do this job, and it's in quite a modern livery. And as of yet, I've not coupled the two nuclear Flask wagons together. First of all, I want to talk about how free rolling these are. And as you can see here on Gordon's Hill, they're not that free rolling. I tried both of them in exactly the same test. I gave them both a good shove, and neither of them were very free rolling. Now obviously these wagons do have the proper bearings on their axles, and I believe that if it was just these bearings that were in contact with the axles, that these wagons would be very free rolling indeed. The fact that they are not suggests that there's something else going on here, and I think it's these axle boxes. As you can see, they look like they're very, very close to the upper part of the bogie, and if those axle boxes are touching the bogie as they rotate, then lots of extra friction is going to be generated. And looking at the performance of these on Gordon's Hill, I think that's exactly what's happened. Now obviously the solution to this problem would have been to add, say, 0.2 millimeters of extra clearance around those axle boxes in order that they don't touch the bogies anymore. But clearly that would have been a compromise, because even that much of a gap would be noticeable, and then the models would look different from the real thing. So that is a decision, isn't it? It is a bit of form over function, perhaps, which is defensible because Accurascale's models are, in terms of form, the best in the industry. They are the most detailed by a long way, and that's great. But particularly with the rolling stock, that does come at the cost of performance. In fact, I don't think I've ever tried an Accurascale wagon or coach that has been as free rolling as models from other manufacturers. That's not been the case with Accurascale's locos, which is good news, but form over function is something I've seen quite a bit with Accurascale's wagons. Having said that, it's not too diabolical or anything. I mean, they're not what I would call stiff, but yeah, the fact of the matter is, to say these have proper bearings on them, they are a lot stiffer than I would expect. So if you put a big rake of these together, your locos are certainly going to feel it. I've just got two though, so this Class 20 is not going to struggle. Let's talk about the couplings then. Now, putting the couplings in was quite tricky because the couplings themselves are a very, very tight fit. And in fact, some of them pushed out some excess material from inside the NEM pocket, which wasn't that great. In fact, I wouldn't recommend putting these couplings in unless you know that you want to put them in to keep them in. Because with this one on the back, the pocket actually came off and then the coupling itself snapped rather than coming back out of the pocket. So not high quality couplings, unfortunately. I've had to repair that one. Are they level or are they flopping though? Let's push everything together and see if they couple correctly. And yep, I can see already that they did. So it would appear that the couplings are at the right height. I don't yet know how they're going to perform around curves, but you know, they've got that movement to them. They spring back to the center. I can't imagine that there's going to be any problem with that. So let's test that. Let's see how they get on around the layout. Okay, here we go. Maybe this is a bit fast for them. I don't know. It seems like the sort of wagon that would be towed very slowly and carefully. But there you go, over the second radius S-bend there with no problems at all. And generally speaking, if something's going to derail, it's there that it will do it. So performance, apart from how much drag there is in these wagons, seems to be really good. They handle curves quite nicely. They look wonderful as they run past. Yes, because of the level of detail, but also because of those rotating axle boxes, which is a marvelous feature. Also, looking at the rake from behind, that blinking light on the back is a marvellous addition as well. I really do like those little features that just add that little extra attention to detail. Yeah, very, very impressive. Right, let's try these on the points test. Alright, so reliability across the points is of paramount importance with these wagons because, of course, the stakes are so high. Any derailments or accidents and you've got nuclear waste all over the place. So let's see if the models are as reliable as the real things would be. Let's go nice and steady over the points backwards. Must be scary stuff in real life. but here in model form it seems to work perfectly. Yeah, we've gone backwards over both sets of points without any issues. Some clicking, but that's acceptable. Forwards, a bit faster. Alright, great. So, in terms of performance then, no major complaints at all. Yeah, they're a little bit draggy, not that free rolling, but they handle points and curves without any issues, and the couplings are perfect as well. So overall, much better than the Siphon-G for performance. If you don't mind the drag, they are perfect performers. Here come the ratings then for the outstanding FNA-D from Accurascale. I think you'll probably agree with me that the level of detail is nothing short of 5-star. Absolutely incredible. The level of decoration is, I think, the most complex I've ever seen on any model. You've got masses of detail, much of it separately fitted. You've got rotating axle boxes, sprung buffers, working lights, screw-link couplings, buffer beam detail. It's just absolutely crazy, so it's a very, very easy 5-star. The performance is also pretty good as well. The couplings are fully functional, they handle curves and points without any issues whatsoever. There is just quite a bit of drag in these, I think thanks to the axle boxes. Not a huge issue, but it does mean that I can't give it a 5 on performance. Similarly, the quality is very, very high. Lots of die-cast in the construction, which gives it a good weight of between 133 and 135 grams, depending on whether or not it's got lights. Put together very nicely, no visible glue, despite the large number of separately fitted parts, and many of the parts, such as the handrails and such, are metal as well, which make them even more sturdy. The models are quite fragile though, and that does come into play when you're trying to access the battery compartment. Yeah, I managed to break off one of those little latches, unfortunately, and I was trying to be careful. You've also got the axle boxes causing friction, which is not great, and the couplings are just far too tight to fit into the pockets. I managed to get them in okay, but then when I went back to film my shots of me doing this to demonstrate how difficult they were, I actually managed to break 2 of them trying to get the couplings back out again. Now these NEM couplings, they're designed to be replaceable, so it is possible that you would need to take these out. If you do, well, with mine it was impossible to do that without damaging them. So again, slight Achilles heel on couplings there. Value for money then. Now these are expensive wagons, that is true. £74.95 for a pack of 2. That leaves them at almost £40 each. Now that is a lot of money, but I think the models are worth it. They are not budget models. If you want to get lots of model for your money, this is not the way to go, because obviously these cost a lot, but you do get what you pay for in the level of detail and the features here. I do think though that the batteries and the magic wand should have been included for that price, because I think £75 is too much to pay to then have to go out and buy a wand or magnets and batteries so that you can actually use the product that you've bought. I think everything needed to use the product should have been included with it, and for that I'm not giving it 5 stars. Overall though, that's a great score of 8.22 out of 10, or a grade of B. And I think these models would have easily been grade A if they included everything needed to use them fully, and also had slightly better couplings and freer running axles. Into the logbook we go then. 3rd place above the Accurascale Siphon-G and below the Rapido SECR brake. Can I recommend these to you? Well, if it's something you're interested in and you've got the cash, absolutely, they are really quite marvellous. So there you have it then folks, the latest new model from Accurascale, which is yet again one of the most detailed I think I've ever seen. You really do get what you pay for with these expensive Accurascale models. They won't be for everybody, like I say. Some people don't really care about this level of detail, and there are sort of cheaper models out there where you can pay less for less detail and, you know, get some more models for the same amount of money or whatever. But Accurascale promise detail. They do charge you extra for it, but then they very much deliver that extra detail to an incredible degree, the likes of which we really don't see from other manufacturers, at least not to this extent. So yeah, level of detail absolutely fantastic, and this time the performance is good enough that I can fully recommend this model without question. So let me know what you think. Do you think the drag issues are much to worry about? Do you think I've been too generous to these models? Or do you agree? Do you think these are as fantastic as I do? Please do let me know what you think about them down in the comments. The drag realistically is not going to make too much of a difference, because, you know, you're not going to be hauling these along with light pre-grouping steam locos or anything. it's going to be modern traction hauling these, and most of those are reasonably powerful. So yeah, I don't think it matters particularly, and it's easy to forget that minor issue in light of the masses of detail and features that the models otherwise offer. So can highly recommend these. I've got affiliate links in the description if you're interested. Thank you once again very much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon for another review. All right, you take care, folks. I'll catch you on the next one.